It's that glorious time of the year, and it's time to talk about September deer fails. It's already here, which is amazing. And I want you to think these are very important, because what you do in September can affect your hunt in November and October, especially most people that begin practices that are bad. It's kind of like starting a bad habit. It's going to stay with you through the season. You're usually not starting off bad and then suddenly changing to good habits of hunting practices and then going back again. It's usually starting bad and staying bad. And so I want to make sure you don't do that. And it is very important in September. I want you to establish good habits, good patterns of hunting, good strategies, and that's why we have this channel. I really want to help you guys, and if we're not giving you information that helps you, then why bother? There's information out there that even sounds good, but it's not helpful, and you know that from experience. And so there's one of those we'll talk about, and got weeds down here. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But bottom line is, number one, burning out your land and stands. So many people start to do this in September when the season opens or right before the season, and they continue that practice all the way through the hunting season. We go to their land in February, they talk about not having any deer, and it's loaded with deer. Rubs, new scrapes, beds, and sign that wasn't there during the hunting season. And it's because they've allowed their land to set for a couple months and no one's been on it, and lo and behold, the deer come back. They're very reactive to hunting pressure, especially older bucks. Does and fawns get pushed around a lot more than bucks. They have a small home range, but even they have their limits. It's interesting, Dylan wanted to bring up a point after I had these written out on the whiteboard, that we were just discussing a drop dead date on our land, which happens to be this coming weekend, that we want to get off 2 to 3 weeks before the season begins and not use the land anymore like we do right now. We like going on an evening cruise. We go on an evening cruise and check out the wildlife, look at trail cams, see how the food plots are doing. We just stand the edges and then we get out of there. That's what we do during the summer. But we need to stop at some point. So that date is this weekend. It'll be Labor Day weekend. So we really need to make sure we're off the land. It's interesting, we allow some neighbors, and I know they probably don't watch YouTube videos, but we allow them to walk on a portion of the property. It's just straight shot. They walk in and out, and they're always a little miffed each year when I tell them not to walk at a certain point, which will be this weekend for them too. Just ran into them last night. They walk an army of dogs, and sometimes they have 10, 15 people going out there like it's a sightseeing tour just for a little walk. And we actually walk our dog on the road. When we go for a walk, we go on the road because we don't want to just haphazardly walk out on the land, but we allow them to do that because they're neighbors. And they're a little miffed that date is this weekend, and every year, the last few years, they're miffed that it's that weekend, that they can't walk on our property anymore, which is just the way of the world now. You know, a lot of people, if you have acreage, they feel like they can just go on your property, or they should have that right to do so. I've been thinking about having a picnic in someone's front yard, but bottom line is, you know, that's this weekend for not only ourselves, but our neighbors too, that we allow to go for a walk on the land, trying to be nice. And then, you know, in that, I'll vent a little bit. In this, we allow them to do that for about 7 to 8 months out of the year, and that's just not good enough to allow them to walk on our land. So bottom line is, you can really burn out your lands and stands. You can do that right off the bat. If deer see you, hear you, or smell you around your stand locations especially, and on the way in and out of your stands, you really begin to spook your land out, and it happens very quickly. Because most of the time we're not just hunting one stand in one location on 40 acres, or we're going out on public land just hunting one stand. We're applying that pressure evenly across an area that we hunt, and we're checking this area out and this area out, and that can all accumulate. I look at it like the number of deer-human encounters. As it adds up throughout the season, it just has a devastating effect to the point where when it gets to a certain level, you're just not going to be able to experience even a fraction of the potential of your land and the area that you can hunt in your favorite hunting grounds. We'll be right back to today's video, but guys, thank you so much. We launched our seed company about 3 weeks ago, and the success has been overwhelming. We've currently had orders from 36 states. We planted our food plot seed because Dylan and I wanted to get one plot in here quick. We're planting the rest August 12th and 13th. But it's so awesome to look down and see our little tiny brassica plants coming in on this side. We have buckwheat, tillage radish, peas on the other side. This has been a huge success for us, but most of all, guys, thank you so much. I know the seed is really high price this year. We will drastically reduce that for next year. I urge you to check it out on our site. We have the Big Boost Nebraska, our fall power greens. We have limited supplies. We appreciate your business. Thank you so much for watching. Now back to the video. Trail cam happy. This is part of that. A lot of people just can't wait. They're getting out the latest trail cameras. We use very high quality Exodus trail cameras for the cell cameras and for our video cameras. And that's what we show in all the B-roll here. And we're using those cameras, we rely on those cameras, and it's pretty tempting once you have your arsenal out, whether that's 2 cameras or 30, that it's pretty tempting to go out and check those cards, look at those cards. Boy, something's moving in front of it. Let's go out and change it real quick and cut something down because something's setting off a camera. Really have to avoid the temptations. Get your cameras out, practice patience. When it gets to the deer season, we actually go out to change the cards when we're deer hunting, a stand nearby. So we're not doubling or tripling our amount of pressure applied to land. It's the same amount of pressure to go to that stand and change a trail cam card on the way or at the stand, the same amount as if we were going into those stands. People ask all the time, when do you change your cards? You know, of course, non-cell cameras is, you know, I tell them I change them when I hunt that stand nearby. We have a camera. Where we have a camera, it's by a stand location. And that helps us because we're using a lot of common entrance and exit routes, common human areas. We can get in and out. We don't expect deer to be there. We don't want them to be there. We can get in and out, grab a few cards on the way in and out, and that's how we access our trail cameras. The trail cameras themselves aren't spooking deer unless they're the red glowing bulbs and they're at deer level. Unless that camera is on a skinny stick and it doesn't have some type of backdrop or profile hidden, then they're not spooking deer. They don't make a noise. They don't give off a scent. In fact, a deer has to go right up to it to smell the fingerprint. It's not like that fingerprint scent blows at them from 6 feet away. So if they can't see it, it's 6 or 7 feet in the air. Its profile is hidden. It's hidden from behind with an effective backdrop, and it's not silhouetted, then they're not going to see that camera. So it really boils down to how much you're in the woods, intruding on the woods. What about the shift? Whitetail shift is something I started talking about, writing articles about many years ago. And I talked about that bucks especially, now does, if they have good fawning cover, good thick cover, and they have good summer food and fall and winter food, they'll stay in the same spot the whole year. Bucks, on the other hand, need a completely different set of habitat conditions in the summertime versus the fall. They need high overstory and shade, hardwoods during the summer, but they prefer very thick cover, often bottomland, upland, where you have that mixture of high diversity of habitat and high stem count, meaning lots of brush, shrubs, grasses, weeds, whatever it might be, briars, hardwood regeneration. They can't live in those areas, especially a big old buck with a big set of antlers, because he can't crash that velvet through that thick cover during the summertime. But it's an area he prefers during the fall, and it gives him his daytime browse. Also, those summer food sources of beans, alfalfa, leaves, and hardwoods are gone. Briars, diversity, what they would choose to prefer to eat during the summer is not there during the fall. And it's that combination. So they're eating summer food, and they're living in an area with high overstory and shade with no cover, because that's what they desire during the summer, completely opposite of does. Does want summer food, but if they have that fall food, they're going to stay, where bucks will shift. And I find that shift to take place over 1 mile to 2 miles. So bucks you're seeing in ag land 1 mile from your property, you have a good chance of seeing them on the property. We do that right now. Minnesota, Wisconsin, a lot of those bucks that are within 1 mile of the property, we plan to kill those bucks this fall, because we have fall property and we plan for the shift. And if you're not planning for the shift and you're not planning for things to change very quickly here, then you're going to be in big trouble. And September is a great time to look at that shift. It's going to happen between mid-September and mid-October. You'll start to see that shift. And that's a great thing if you have a fall habitat and you have a lack of hunting pressure on your land. But that's only 5% of all parcels. 95% mature bucks go somewhere else. And there's very few parcels that hold mature bucks. We try to teach you how to hold mature bucks. It's what we teach our clients to do, whether it's myself, Dylan, Kevin, Joe, with Whitetail Habitat Solutions and designing your property. But we want you to be a part of that 5% club, be a 5%er, and not a 95%er like most people out there. And it all goes to not only recognizing that whitetail shift, but planning for it and making sure you put the conditions out there on your land, you build those, or you find those on public land so that you can actually hunt deer in October, November. But rest assured, in September, it's changing fast. So these conditions you've been watching all summer aren't going to be here for mature bucks and older bucks and target bucks in the next couple weeks. They're going to completely change. And people even say, well, on my land, they stay the entire year. Well, you probably have a cover chunk. It's surrounded by ag land. You don't have a lot of other cover in the area, and you have summer food and fall food. Well, that's that's a very small percentage of parcels that actually hold deer. So there are those exceptions all the time in life, and it's no different with deer habitat. But rest assured, if you're not planning for the shift, you're going to be sorely mistaken. Number 4, got weeds? Do you have weeds in your food plots right now? If you do, that's failure. We have a plot right out here, one that has a lot of pigweed in it. I can't stand it. It's in 2 sections on the food plot, a big food plot. And I just didn't recognize that it was coming in young. I'll take care of it next year. And if I don't, that's a big failure on my part. So we have weeds in one of the plots. Almost all the plots are really weed-free, clean-free, because we planned for that. And I saw something today on Instagram. They were talking about burning or blowing and then throwing seed on the ground. You're getting rid of leaf debris and that dead matter, exposing the soil and throwing the seeds on the ground and expecting good growth. They're even saying, well, you need to get those seeds on the ground within a few days, because you're going to have competing competition come in right away with first rain now that the sunlight's hitting the ground. Folks, that couldn't be further from the truth. If you have weeds coming into your food plot, they'll overtake. It doesn't matter if those weeds encroach in 3 weeks. You don't have a 3 or 4 day window. You have no window. You have to adequately prepare for controlling your weeds. And if you don't, you fail. Because your weeds, if they come in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or 4 days, they're going to overtake your plot, and you're going to take 100% of potential volume, and you're going to shrink that to 20% or less because of those weeds that are encroaching, could be even 10%. And when you take half of your plots, add weeds to half of your plots, in those areas that those weeds are at, they're going to diminish the growth of the actual targeted forages within that food plot to the point where they're basically dwindling down to nothing or not even being appreciable. So it can have drastic consequences in your food plots. And so you need to be very mindful that you're controlling weeds. You know, one way is to disc repeatedly throughout the entire summer. You can do that, and you can eliminate weeds, but you're also opening up your soil to erosion. You're drying out your soil, and you're destroying that top layer of soil, that topsoil layer, by repeatedly disking your land. So that's not a good idea either. You can use crops like buckwheat, for example, and then rye. Both limit weeds, smother crop of buckwheat, smother crop of rye. You can do that and repeat that in the fall, the summer. But around here, if you're just using rye during the fall, you might as well not even plant food plots. They're not going to be attractive to actually pull deer in and build a herd during the fall. And if you're worried about, or you really have a goal of creating a good herd and a good hunt on your land, then rye's not going to cut it. Now, that could be an actual food plot program that we would recommend in northern areas, the UP of Michigan, northern Minnesota, Wisconsin, upstate New York. Limited food plot size, that might work perfect. That rotation, you're building soil, you're eliminating weeds. You wouldn't even have to use a weed killer at that point. And then there's the thought of using weed killer. I recommend glyphosate. Once it's a soil, it's diluted, so you can only spray it. I've had people this year say, well, I sprayed. But if you spray soil and that's all that's there, you're not going to kill anything. It only kills something that's growing. And Roundup's a moderate killer at best. Doesn't kill clover, for example. Doesn't kill a huge percentage of broadleafs. You need stronger chemicals. Glyphosate is a weak chemical. 2,4-D is stronger. Simazine or atrazine is even stronger on top of that. So you can use balance. We choose to use a lot of buckwheat during the summertime. We use rye going into the spring on half of all of our plots. And then we're using limited herbicide or balanced herbicide treatments to control weeds. But bottom line, if you have weeds on your land or on your food plots, you failed. Number 5, too much money spent. You can't overcome a lack of planning, lack of preparation, poor stand locations, poor hunting strategy by spending a lot of money on your bow, your arrows, your equipment, a scent contraption machine, whatever it might be, camo. You're not going to overcome your shortcomings as a hunter by spending more money. In the hunting industry, you just can't do that. You know, sometimes in fishing, you can buy good electronics, really good electronics, a really good boat. You have good bait, tackle, you pick up some tips, and you can go out and catch a lot of fish. That's not the same with mature bucks. You can't buy mature bucks unless you go to a fenced-in enclosure. You can't do that. In fact, the more money you spend typically on a private parcel, unless you manage your improvements of habitat on that land, then you're going to be further behind, because you're not assembling those in ways that allow deer to move throughout your property without being exposed to your hunting efforts. So more improvements opens deer up to more hunting pressure, and they can pattern you more than you can pattern them. And think of all the money and time that's spent, let alone on gadgets and gear and gizmos. That starts in September right now. And so if you're spending too much money, you'll experience a diminishing return right now, and you'll be pretty frustrated. Maybe your spouse will be too, that you spent all that money and didn't shoot any deer. by the time it gets into December, but you can't overcome your hunting and habitat shortcomings by spending a lot of money. And number 6, and this is a big one, not preparing your areas for switchgrass right now. It's a really good opportunity to do so. Now we can talk about simazine before spring green up, applying chemical. We can do 2,4-D and Roundup, glyphosate and 2,4-D. After spring green up, when your weeds are 8, 10, 12 inches tall and growing aggressively, you get some good kills there. But you're still gonna have too many weeds in your switchgrass. Unless you're planting on a food plot that's been chemically controlled, then that's the opportunity you have going into this fall. Not only to frost seed switchgrass from Labor Day in the north to October 1st down in the southern areas, but you also have that opportunity to get a spraying of 2,4-D and glyphosate, maybe mowing the area first, then spraying, or vice versa. But getting a good kill in the area you plan to plant switchgrass in the spring and frost seed. So you can get a good kill, get frost seed mid-September to mid-October, early October. But a great time to do so, and by getting that kill in right now, then when you spray the simazine, you spray the Roundup at 2,4-D later in the spring next year, you're gonna have a very weed-free area for switchgrass to grow. And weeds are the death of all switchgrass. You can't just throw it out and keep mowing for years and it'll be great. You need to mow, use some chemicals, and most people don't continue to mow. That's why it doesn't work out very well. You need to mow sometimes 3 times a year if you're not using a good chemical regimen, and you're not gonna get a stand of switchgrass that stands up and offers the screening and protection that you're looking for whether it's wildlife or yourself for getting in and out of tree stands or screening a food plot, whatever it might be. So really pay attention to that. Don't miss this opportunity in September to get a good spray in those areas and go into the spring with confidence that your switchgrass is going to grow with very low competition. And like I said, the death of all switchgrass is competition, weeds, and not only does it hurt your food plots, of course, but it really devastates your switchgrass too. And number 7, really don't need to mention this, but if you're not shooting your bow by now, you probably shouldn't hit the woods before November 1st or middle of October, something like that. But really need to be shooting your bow, getting to know your bow, familiar with your bow, starting to shoot your broadhead, shooting your broadheads a while ago, and enjoying shooting your bow at this point. So here's some September deer fails. We could go into a lot more, but when it gets into September, these are the big ones, I think, especially pressuring your land, not recognizing the shift. Those are some very, very important ones. There's weeds, there's not much you can do about it right now other than get a good kill on your food plot, maybe 2,4-D and Roundup, and then broadcast rye in about 2 weeks. More towards middle of September to early October, middle of October if you're extreme south. But you're putting 200 pounds of winter rye at least per acre. If you plant really late, say you're in northern Wisconsin, upstate New York, and you're planting your rye, and it's more towards October 1st, I'd go as high as 300 pounds per acre of rye and plant that, throw that down after you get a good kill, and at least try to salvage the season, because there's not a lot that you can plant this late until you get towards the middle of the country and south. You need to plant brassicas down there in Tennessee right now, portions of West Virginia, southern areas, South Carolina, North Carolina, Louisiana, you can put brassica in, but when we're getting up in our area, brassica should have been planted a couple weeks ago or more. It's a little too late for that. You can plant more peas right now, oats, rye. Tillage radish is fast growing. There's some fast growing varieties that you can plant, but bottom line is it's starting to get late. We have our switchgrass blends. They'll be on the website soon. They'll probably be by the time you watch this, so make sure you check those out. And there's a base type of switchgrass for your area, whether it's south or north, and then we have some stiffening varieties in there too as well, to give you a better stand that's not blowing over. So we want to tailor those to the more southern and northern areas, and I would imagine next year we probably have an east and west too. You could almost break that down into 4 areas, but we'll at least start out with north and south this year, and I urge you to check those out if you're looking to plant switchgrass right now in frost seed, or even into the spring. So September deer fails, I urge you not to make them. Learn from other people's mistakes. Most of these I've failed at, so that's why I bring them to you, or we get constant questions on or comments. And bottom line, have a great September, whether you're preparing for the hunt or actually going out to the woods. Have a safe time, enjoy, and again, it's that glorious time of the year. So move into the fall with confidence and enjoy the hunt. Folks, I want to make sure you check out my web class video series, whether it's how to design your food plot program or how to design your property in general. And we have a new one coming out that'll be how to hunt the rut. But these bucks back here are a testament. Some of these bucks go back to 93. They're even in different states. I urge you to check out those web classes so that you can help yourself, help your land, help your hunt. The link is in the description. And also for those that have tried them out, I encourage you to offer some feedback in the comments below. Thank you.